We begin tonight with Donald Trump's unwavering stance on Greenland, a position that's been hardened by him viewing military exercises there as a challenge to the United States. Troops from several European nations have been involved in Arctic maneuvers at the invitation of Denmark. Mr. Trump has questioned their intentions and accused the countries involved of playing what he called a very dangerous game. A day ahead of his own arrival in Switzerland, the US president said he thought European leaders would not push back too much over his plans to make Greenland a US state. He said he was 100% serious about the threat to impose tariffs on countries that support Denmark. He was asked to rule out the use of force in order to achieve that end, and he replied with no comment. He also threatened to put trade tariffs of 200% on French wine, including champagne, apparently because the French President Emmanuel Macron has refused to join his so-called Board of Peace to oversee Gaza. Meanwhile, European leaders have used their addresses to the World Economic Forum in Davos to argue that Greenland should remain free of US control. Europe has been keen to maintain a united front, threatening retaliation if Mr. Trump imposes sanctions. The French President Emmanuel Macron and the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, have taken center stage today at the forum.
We have to have it. They have to have this done. They can protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And, you know, because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property.
Why are you upset about NATO allies thinking that, more seriously in Greenland by holding military exercises?
Well, that wasn't a military. They sent a few people. And they say they sent them not for me, but to guard against Russia. But, NATO's been warning Denmark for about 20 years now, longer than that, 25 years. They've been warning Denmark about the Russian threat. And it's not only Russia, it's also China. So we'll see what happens. But let's put it this way. It's going to be a very interesting Davos. No, I don't care about the Nobel Prize. First of all, a very fine woman felt that I deserved it and really wanted me to have the Nobel Prize. And I appreciate that. If anybody thinks that Norway doesn't control the Nobel Prize, they're just kidding. They have a board, but it's controlled by Norway. And I don't care what Norway says. I think I have a lot of messages for Davos, but the primary message is how well the United States is doing. And I say it all the time. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. And now we have the hottest country in the world. I mean, you've been...
Right. We were hoping to hear also from the French president, who's been speaking at Davos, as well as the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who's also been speaking there and talking up or the US attempt to take over Greenland and speaking of European solidarity and attempts to stop that action from President Trump from gaining traction. Well, I don't know if he's ready now, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, but for more on this, let's make a valiant attempt and go down the line to London, where I'm hoping to be joined by the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. I understand he had a problem hearing me. I don't know if he can hear me now. Right, apparently he can't hear me now, but this appears to be another day and another difficult one. The European Union, if you could turn them into one personality, you could say that their blood pressure is being raised by President Trump. They are, of course, the European leaders on the receiving end. Donald Trump repeating his ambition to take total control of Greenland from Denmark. We're aiming to get Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, whose analysis with these kinds of things is usually pretty spot on, hoping to get him to reflect on the mood among sort of European leaders over this nettlesome issue. There are, from what we understand, lots of back channels, conversations going on, what action to take or not to take, all in an attempt to manage Mr. Trump. And from what I'm hearing and seeing, there appears to be a feeling in Europe that they're damned if they take action and damned if they don't, because let's face it, there's no easy way to deal with Donald Trump. And the problem here for Europe is that if they get confrontational over the issue of Greenland tariffs, for example, that could alienate Mr. Trump and the US even further. And the truth, of course, is that Europe needs Donald Trump probably more than the US needs Europe. For one thing, they need America to use its muscle to bring about a sustainable peace in Ukraine, and they also need America for their own security, because, I mean, for decades now, Europe has ceded its security to the Americans. On the other hand, of course, any wise advisor would tell a leader to move softly with Donald Trump, because since he returned to the White House, he has become considerably more, to use the words of one analyst, belligerent. And the problem, as I said, for Europe is that if they go softly too much, they risk looking extremely weak with the sovereignty of an EU and NATO member state. And of course, in this case, it is Denmark which is being threatened. Well, I'm told that we have established communications with the author and international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. He joins me now on the line from London. Dr. Laskiewicz, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I do hope you can hear me. As I mentioned at the outset, it's another day, another stream of statements from the US president that is guaranteed to raise the blood pressure of European leaders who are on the receiving end. Mr. Trump repeating his ambition to take total control of Greenland from Denmark. I wonder if you can reflect for us on the mood among European leaders over this nettlesome issue, because, I mean, there's supposed to be lots of back-channel conversations going on about what action to take or not to take, all in an attempt to manage Mr. Trump.
I think the correct term is the last one, manage President Donald Trump. There is no way that Europe can withstand an American assault. And already there's been backtracking on that issue from the people who said that they would be reinforcing Greenland. Number two, they don't have the strength to withstand America. And they don't have the strength either, really, to take on Russia. And so the point is, what are they to do? Now, there's been a lot of loose talk about Europe possibly being able to punish USA in some way, dumping US bonds, not letting US into the European market. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, Europe requires USA more than USA requires Europe. And so therefore, I don't actually anticipate any of these actions actually being put into practice. It gets worse. The head of NATO is a very emollient character, Mark Rutte, and that's why he was actually appointed, because he had a success as the Dutch leader in keeping a coalition together for many years, which was very disparate. And they assumed that this was the problem here, but it isn't that problem anymore. The problem is what to do with the most powerful nation in NATO if it wants to go its own way. And Donald Trump has made it quite clear he's prepared to drop NATO if he doesn't get his way on Greenland. So the long and the short of it, Europe is, as you pointed out, nettled. I would go further than that and say they're extremely worried. And they're actually got two simultaneous contradictory policies. One is to somehow manage Donald Trump and agree with him and find a way of communicating. And the other one is to stand up to him. And to be quite honest, as things stand, all Donald Trump is hearing is how weak Europe is. And he's now taken the opportunity, by the way, not only to take on Europe, but Great Britain, because he's pointed out that the Chagos Island settlement just shows how weak the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and Great Britain now is. So on the whole, Donald Trump is at present pushing and succeeding, and Europe is finding it hard to find a common language or indeed any consistent response at all.
And of course, Donald Trump also pointedly talked about what he described as the stupidity of Britain. And of course, watching all this from the sidelines, Russia and China with, as someone put it, a big box of popcorn, because in their eyes, that concept of the West that's dominated global politics for decades appears now to be crumbling, doesn't it?
Yes. Unless they manage to keep somehow America on board in NATO, and it seems like a very good chance that actually that will not happen, because President Donald Trump has made it quite clear he doesn't really rate Europe at all. It means that the most central aspect, the hegemonistic character of the West over the rest of the world, will be shattered. And in this case, Russia and China will benefit from this. Moreover, and here comes the key problem, if he takes Greenland, why should finally China not take Taiwan? Why should Russia finally not move on Europe? I mean, if Donald Trump's not prepared to back Europe, Europe is just a huge prize for the Russians, as they've been wanting and thinking about for centuries. So yes, both China and Russia are looking, indulging in popcorn and throwing a few curvers, wobbly balls in. For example, Russia is saying how it could defend Greenland, just to spice things up a bit.
And I wonder if you would agree, Dr. Laskiewicz, with some analysts who say that this is the biggest crisis in the defense alliance NATO's history, because what you have here is the US, the biggest member of NATO, going against so many of the other member states, the UK, France, Germany, Denmark, etc. So are we looking at potentially the whole thing crumbling?
Yes, what would be left would be America by itself, which is powerful enough to be by itself, and the rest of NATO, essentially Europe, with of course Great Britain. Essentially, these are then the only what's left of NATO, and to be honest, it doesn't really scare anybody, least of all the Russians. And therefore, yes, this is the biggest crisis. And what NATO or the rest of NATO should do, that's say Europe, is they have to work out a consistent policy. Either they're going to stand up to Donald Trump, in which case he threatens to leave NATO, or they don't, in which case he takes Greenland, so to speak, with their blessing, and Europe is shown up to be an absolute paper tiger. So therefore, albeit painted artistically, but a paper tiger nonetheless. And this is the key problem. They have to work out what they're going to do. And at present, they're riding two horses simultaneously, which is going even worse.
And in addition, of course, we're also looking at potentially a transatlantic trade war, which would affect the whole world, wouldn't it? And that'll happen if Donald Trump goes ahead with his Greenland tariffs on February the 1st, and if the EU retaliates strongly against the US.
Yeah, the central problem here is, can Europe afford to take America on? Militarily, it's not possible. Economically, Europe is a big market, sure, but it's very much a number three. It's China and America, which are now the big boys. They're the ones who are competing against each other and making all the running. And Europe's very much a number three place, with Great Britain, of course, even being behind that. And so therefore, in this trade war, can Europe do it? Can it win such a war? Is there a point to such a war? So therefore, what would happen is Europe prepared to stand up to the USA or not? That's what it comes down to. And if not, then to be quite honest, their only other choice is to let Greenland go. But of course, what they're going to do is do neither one nor the other. Get the tariffs from USA, decide probably not to retaliate because it's too dangerous, or do very little actions, and therefore come out as an impotent paper tiger, to recall my previous point.
Indeed. And all this, and it's only day 2 of Davos. Day 3 brings President Trump himself.
Yeah, I'm surprised he wants to turn up, to be honest. He's made it quite clear he doesn't really rate all these international bodies. And to be honest, they are all toothless. It's happened before, by the way. Just before World War II, there was something called the League of Nations instead of the United Nations. And there were also bodies. And when Germany pushed, the whole thing fell apart. And Russia incidentally pushed as well. And we have the same situation now. At the end of the day, there was an aggressive attack made by Russia, no real retaliation from the UN and so on, not much anyway. These international bodies are toothless, and as talking shops, is there a point? He's made this quite clear. Either you follow me or you get a tariff war, and he thinks America can win. And to be honest, because Europe on the whole, it has to, is lived off the American market for decades, such a trade war I think would hurt Europe far more than America. And therefore, in this respect, I think Trump is winning. But I'm surprised he wants to go to Davos. I don't see a good reason why. I expect him to call it off, to be honest.
Very interesting. And somebody just sent a text describing what Donald Trump is doing as Viking ideology. We'll have to watch and see how far that unfolds. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, always a pleasure to have you on the program. He is, of course, an author and international affairs analyst. He was talking to me on the line there from London.